Hey everyone, my name is Olaf, and today I'll teach you how to make this exact animation in Blender. You will learn how to model it, how to rig it, how to animate it, and then how to render it. As always, it will be quick and easy, so let's get started. Okay, so start off by switching from Blend Render to Cycles Render for better shading, and then click S, then Z to scale the cube on the Z axis. Then left click to confirm the scale, then click S, then Y to scale the object on the Y axis. Then left click to confirm, and then click S, then X to scale the object on the X axis. And then again left click to confirm. And then click S, then Y to scale it even more down on the Y axis. Okay, and now we need to add a curve. So click Shift A and add a circle curve. Then click R, Y, then 90 to rotate it 90 degrees on the Y axis. Then go into edit mode. Then click A to deselect everything. Then click B to box select, and then select each side. And then click S, then Y to scale the curve on the Y-axis, and then scale it on the Y-axis until you have this shape, or something like this. So left click to confirm, and now we need to duplicate the track around the curve. So go back to object mode, and then select the object, and then go into the modifiers, add modifier, and the first modifier you need to add is the array modifier, and then change the X value to 0, and then change the Y value, because we need to duplicate these tracks on the Y axis. So set it to 1.05, and then increase the count, and then click S to scale them down, and left click to confirm the scale. And now we need to add another modifier, which is the curve modifier. And by adding the curve modifier, we can wrap the tracks around the curve. So add the object, which is the Bezier circle, and then change it from the x-axis to the minus y-axis. And as you can see, we have the track. So now we need to increase the count in the array modifier. So increase the count until they overlap, and then you need to change the Y value so that we get the correct gap between each track. So you basically need to make sure that the last gap between the first and the last track plate is the same as the rest of them. So I'll just experiment with some different values until we get the right gap. Okay, so I'm gonna change the value one more time. And then let's scale it on the x-axis, because right now it's kind of wide. So click S, then X to scale the tracks on the x-axis. Left click to confirm. And now we can select the curve. Then click G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. And as you can see, we can move the tracks. And we're not only going to get the movement of the tracks, but also the movement of the tracks along the curve, which looks great. And if you want to, you can also edit the tracks so that the tracks hit the floor as well. So click G, then Z to grab them on the Z axis. And once again, we need to change the values in the array modifier to make sure the gap is closed. So go back to object mode, select the tracks, and then change the Y value until they fit correctly. Okay, so something like this. And now we have the tracks. So let's save it. So click File, then Save As, and then give it a name and save it wherever you want on the computer. And then when you have the name, just click Enter to save. Okay, so now it's time to add the wheels. So click Shift A and add a cylinder. Then click R, Y, then 90 to rotate the cylinder 90 degrees on the y-axis. And then click G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. And then click S, then X to scale it down on the x-axis. And then click S, then Shift X to scale it only on the Z and y-axis. And then click G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. And G, then Z to grab it on the Z-axis. Then click S, then Shift X to scale it only on the Z and Y-axis. And now go into edit mode, and then face select, then hold in shift to select both faces, and then click N, and we need to increase the increase value to 1, so that when we add the subdivision surface modifier, we're only going to smooth out the sides of the cylinder and not the 2 circles. Okay, and then go back to object mode, and then click Shift D to duplicate, and then click Y to grab the duplication on the Y-axis. And then drag it along the Y-axis until it hits the other side of the tracks. Then left click to confirm the position. And let's duplicate it once again, so click Shift D, then Y to grab the duplication on the Y-axis. Then click S, then Shift X to scale the cylinder only on the Z and Y-axis, so that we don't scale it on the X-axis. And then left click to confirm the scale. And then click G, then Z to grab it on the Z-axis. And then click G, then Y to grab the cylinder on the Y-axis. And then left click to confirm the position. And now we need to add an array modifier, so click Array, and then change the X value to 0, and then change the Y value to 1.05, and then increase the count to 4. Now, because this is a cartoon tag, it's not supposed to look realistic, so just play around with the scales. So click S, then Shift X to scale the objects only on the Z and Y axis. And I try to make the gaps on each side similar, so click G, then Y to grab them on the Y axis. Okay. And now I'm going to model the smaller wheels, so go into edit mode and face select and click A to deselect everything. Then click Ctrl R to add a loop cut, and then left click to confirm, and then select the face on the other side, and then click X and delete the vertices. Then add a new modifier, which is the mirror modifier, and then deselect the X-axis and select the Z-axis, so that when we do a change on this side, it's going to change the other side as well. So click E, left click, and then S to scale the extrusion down. And then left click once again, and then click E to extrude it inwards. And that's it. It's a very simple design, but I think it looks okay. And then go back to object mode. Right now the modifiers might look a bit messy, so let's hide them for now. And let's duplicate the smaller wheels. So click Shift D to duplicate, and then Z to grab the duplication on the Z-axis. And click G, then Z to grab them on the Z-axis. And let's decrease the count to 3. And then click G, then Y to grab them on the Y-axis. And then the next step is to adjust the position and the size of these small wheels. So click G, then Z to grab them on the Z-axis, and just try to find the optimal position for these small wheels. Okay, so let's save. Click File, and then Save As, and I will give it a new name to create a new file, and then click Enter. Okay, and now it's time to duplicate the tracks. So click Z to go into Wireframe, and then click B to box select, and then click Numpad 1 for front view, and then click Shift D, and then X to grab the duplication on the X-axis. And then left click to confirm, and click G, then X once again to grab it a bit more on the X-axis. Okay, so now we have 2 tracks, and it's time to add an empty to control them. So click A to deselect everything, and then you need to add the empty, so click Shift A, and then go into empty and add a cube. Then click G, then X to grab the cube on the X-axis, and then left click to confirm, and then click S to scale it up, left click to confirm, then G, then Z to grab it on the Z-axis, and then we can select the 2 curves, so hold it Shift, select them, and then select the empty. And then click Ctrl P to set the two curves parent to the empty. Now when you click G, then Y to grab the empty on the Y-axis, you will see that you control both tracks. Okay, so now that we have both tracks, we can finally add the main body of the tank. So to create the main body of the tank, you first need to add a mesh. So click Shift A and add a cube. And then click G, then X to grab the cube on the X-axis. Then left click to confirm. And then we need to scale the cube. So click S, then X to scale the cube on the X-axis. And click G, then X to grab it on the X-axis, and S, then X to scale it on the X-axis. You can also click numpad 7 for the top view, and then numpad 5 to get the orthographic view. We will not do very complicated modeling in this tutorial, so for now let's just click S, then Y to scale the object on the Y-axis, and then left click to confirm the scale. And then click G, then Y to grab it on the Y-axis, and then S, then Y to scale it on the Y-axis. And then click Set to go back to solid view, and then click numpad 3 to go to the side view, and go into edit mode. Then go into edge select, and click A to deselect everything, then Set for wireframe, and then B to box select. And then click G, then Y to grab these edges on the Y-axis. Then go back to object mode, and let's just grab it on the Z-axis. So click G, then Set to grab it on the Z-axis. Left click to confirm. And then let's go back to edit mode. And then click B to box select, and then click G, then Set to grab these edges on the Z-axis. Then left click to confirm. And then click A to deselect, and then B to box select, and then click G, then Y once again to grab these edges on the Y-axis. Okay, so now we have the basic shape, so let's go back to object mode. And let's save it. So click File, and then Save As, and then create a new file. And then Enter to save. And let's start off with a subdivision surface modifier. And increase the amount of subdivisions to make it higher poly. And then let's go into edit mode once again. And we're going to use loop cuts to shape the tank. So click Ctrl R to add a loop cut. And then drag it to the front. And then left click to confirm. And then we create a second loop cut. And then drag it to the back. And then we need to add loop cuts to the rest of the body of the tank as well. So left click to confirm, and then click Ctrl R, and then use the mouse wheel to add an additional loop cut. And then left click, and then click S, then X to move the loops on the X-axis. Okay, so we still have to add additional loop cuts. So let's go to the side of the tank. And then we need to click Ctrl R once again to add the loop cut, and then drag it upwards. So click Ctrl R, click, and then drag it upwards. And then left click to confirm, and then Ctrl R once again, and then drag it downwards. Okay, so now it's finally time to add a turret. So let's go back to object mode. And then let's just grab it a bit on the Y-axis. Click G, then Y to grab it on the Y-axis. Then click Shift S to move the cursor to the origin of the selected object. And then click Shift A to add a cube, which will become the turret. So add a cube. And then click G, then Set to grab it on the Z-axis. And then click G, then Y to grab it on the Y-axis. And then the next step is to scale the object on the Y-axis. So click S, then Y to scale it on the Y-axis. Then left click to confirm. And then we need to scale it on the x-axis as well. So click S, then X to scale it on the x-axis. Then click G, then Z to grab the object on the z-axis. And then click S, then Y to scale it on the y-axis. And then G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. Now, it's obviously almost impossible to get the exact same shapes and sizes as I have, so just experiment and try to get something similar. So let's go into edit mode. And then click A to deselect everything, then set for wireframe, then B to box select, and then click G, then set to grab these edges on the z-axis. Then click B to box select, and then click G, then Y to grab the front a little bit backwards, so that we get the typical turret shape. Okay, then go back to object mode, and add the subdivision surface modifier, and increase the subdivisions to 4 or 5. And then let's make a save before we continue. So I'm just going to give it a new name so that we get a separate file, which is always useful. And then click enter to save afterwards. Okay, so the next step in the tutorial is to add the loop cuts. And let's go into edit mode. And then once again you need to click Ctrl R to add a loop cut, and then drag it forward. Then left click to confirm. And then add another one, so click Ctrl R and drag it backwards. And then we need to add the loop cuts to the sides as well. So click Ctrl R and use the mouse wheel to add an additional loop cut. And then click S, then X to grab them on the x-axis. And then we need to add loop cuts to the top and the bottom as well. So click Ctrl R once again and drag it downwards. And then click Ctrl R and drag it upwards. And left click to confirm. Okay, so now we have the turret. So let's go back to object mode. Now the next step of the tutorial is to add a cylinder, which is for the rotation of the turret. So click Shift S to move the cursor to the selected object, and then click Shift A to add a cylinder. Then click G, then Z to grab the cylinder on the z-axis. So first go to the side view, number 3, and then G, then Z to grab it on the z-axis. And then click S, then Z to scale it on the z-axis. Then click S, then Shift Z to only scale it on the X and Y axis. And then let's go into edit mode and select the two faces, holding Shift, and then increase the ingress value to 1, and then add the subdivision surface modifier. Okay, so let's go back to object mode, and then let's grab it a bit on the z-axis, G, then Z to grab it on the z-axis. And then we need to add the gun barrel. So click Shift A and add a cylinder. And then we need to rotate the cylinder. So click R, X, then 90 to rotate the cylinder 90 degrees on the x-axis. And then click G, then Z to grab it on the z-axis. And then click G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. S to scale it down. And then G, then Z to grab it on the z-axis. And then click numpad 1 for the front view. And let's scale it up a bit. So click S to scale, and then S, then Shift Y to only scale it on the X and Z-axis. And right now the cylinder is low poly, so we need to go into edit mode, and then go to face select and select both faces. And then increase the ingress value to 1. And then add the subdivision surface modifier to increase the amount of polygons in the cylinder. Okay, and then select the face on the back, and then click G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. And then select the face on the front, and then click G, then Y to grab it on the y-axis. Now again, it's difficult to create the exact same shapes, so just try to experiment with the shapes and create the tank that you like. So click A to select everything, and then click S, then Shift Y to only scale it on the X and Z axis. Now, since this is a cartoon tank, there's no right or wrong way to scale the turret or model the turret, so just test out different sizes and shapes. Okay, and then select the face in the front, and I click numpad 3 to go to the side view, and then we need to extrude it, so click E to extrude, and then left click, and then click S to scale up the extrusion, and then click E to create a new extrusion, left click, and then click E to extrude once again, and S to scale the extrusion down. And then let's go to the side view, set, and then E to extrude it inwards into the barrel of the tank gun. Okay, so now we have the tank barrel, and let's change the mean increase value on the barrel to make it look a little bit better. So hold it Alt to select the whole circle, and then decrease the mean increase value to 0. Okay, and then select the circle at the front as well. So hold in Alt, and then select it, and then decrease the mean increase value to almost 0. Okay, so that's it for the gun barrel. So now the modeling is almost done. So let's save, click Save As, and then create a new file, and then click Enter to save once again. Okay, so I think I want to make the gun barrel a bit larger. So let's go to Object Mode, and then scale it. So click S, then Shift Y to scale it only on the X and Z axis if you want to, and then left click to confirm. And now we need to rig the tank. So let's start off by setting the gun barrel parent to the turret by clicking Ctrl P, and then select the turret, and then select the cylinder, which you can select manually at the top right side. Just hold in Shift, and then click Ctrl P. And when we set one object parent to another object, the first object will follow the last object we select. Okay, and let's add an empty to control it. So a sphere, and scale it up so that it's easier to control. And then select the cylinder, and then select the sphere empty, and then click Ctrl P so that the sphere empty controls the cylinder inside. And when you click R, then set, you can see that we rotate the turret with the gun barrel. Okay, so now we have a rig for the turret and the tracks. So let's rig the rest of the tank as well. So start off by holding in Shift and select the main body of the tank. And then click Ctrl P to set the empty sphere parent to the body of the tank. And then we will set the body of the tank parent to the empty cube. And then make sure to select all of the wheels as well. And the wheels on the other side as well. And then set them parent to the main body of the tank. And then click Ctrl P. And now when we grab the empty cube, you can see that we control the whole tank. Okay, so before we go to the next step of the tutorial, let's just make a new save before we continue. So click Save As and create a new file. And then click Enter. Now before we continue, I just want to make a small change on the turret. So right click to select the turret, and then click G, then Y to grab the turret on the Y axis. And then we need to go into edit mode and grab the back of the turret. Let's go to edit mode, and then A to deselect everything, then set for wireframe, and then B to box select. And then click G, then Y to grab the back of the turret a little bit backwards, like this. Okay, and then we can continue. So let's go back to object mode. And to look through the camera, click numpad 0. And then click Shift F to use the fly cam, and you move around with W, A, S, and D, just like in a video game. So let's set the camera around here. And then click Shift A to add a plane, which will become the floor. So click G, then Z to grab the floor on the Z axis, and S to scale it up. And then click G, then Z, and make sure it has the right position on the Z axis. And then right click to select the lamp. And then turn it into a sun. Change the size to 1. And then click Use Nodes. And then increase the strength to 7. Or something around 7. And then click G to grab and R to rotate the sun. Okay, so now we have the basic lighting. So let's see what it looks like in rendered view. So I'll go down and switch from solid view to rendered view. And if you have a GPU, make sure to use it. But you can also use the CPU if you don't have a GPU. And you can change it in the device, as you can see on the right side. And I'm also going to change the background color in the world settings to make it a little bit brighter. Maybe give it kind of a bluish color as well. That's up to you. And let's select the body of the tank and create a new material. So add a new material, and let's make it blue. Now again, what colors you add is completely up to you, so just select a color you like. And then I will copy the same material to the turret as well. So just select it at the left side of the material, and let's select the gun barrel and add the same material. And then let's select all of the wheels and add the same material. And this might take some time, so I'm just going to speed up the process. And I'll add the blue material to all of the wheels. And then I will add another material for the tracks. Okay. Okay, so let's select the tracks and make a separate material for the tracks. So I like to make it a different shade of the same color as the body of the tank. So something like this. Just a similar color. So just try to experiment with the colors and find something that looks nice. Okay. Now when we look into the camera again, you will see that the range is not very far. So we need to increase the range of the camera. So select the camera and then change the end clipping to a higher value. Okay. And the next step is to edit the colors if you want to. I'm just going to speed over this part because it's not really useful. I ended up with a blue color anyway, so it didn't really matter. Okay, so let's animate the rig. So let's start off by keyframing the location of the empty cube. Then go forward in time on this timeline, and then click G and then Y to grab it on the Y-axis. Then left click to confirm the location, and then click I to keyframe the new location. And as you can see, we have the first animation. And let's animate the turret as well, just for fun. So click I to keyframe the rotation. And then rotate on the Z-axis. Click R, then Z to rotate it on the Z-axis. Left click to confirm the rotation, and then click I to keyframe the rotation. Then let's go forward in time once again, and change the Z rotation to 0. And then click I to keyframe. And as you can see, we have a simple animation. And if you want to see what it looks like in rendered view, just click Shift Z, and you will get the rendered view of the animation. And let's move the camera a bit as well. So Shift F to use the fly cam. And I think it looks okay. So let's go into the render settings. So to go into the render settings, you need to click the camera icon, and then increase the resolution quality to 100%. And I also like to change the end frame to around 140, and then the frame rate to 30. And in the output, you choose where you want the finished animation to be saved. So just give the animation a name somewhere in your computer, and then click enter to save. And when it comes to the file type, I will save this animation as an AVI JPEG file. Just select it and then increase the quality to 100%. And then for the sampling, I like to set it to 300 if you have a slow computer. Maybe set it to 128. And if you have a GPU, make sure to increase the tile size. If not, just leave them at 64 if you use a CPU. So let's make a test render so that you know how long it takes to render each frame. And I speeded up this part. And let's just save it before we start the rendering. Give it a new name as always. And then we click animation to render out the whole animation. So let's just see what it looks like first to be sure. And it looks okay, so let's just click animation. And that's it for this tutorial. If you want more tutorials in this format, make sure to subscribe, and thank you for watching. And if you want to get even deeper into creating tanks, I will link to a Udemy course that I created in the description.